So for this deep dive, we've got a pretty significant stack of sources in front of us.
We do.
And they all kind of orbit this one profoundly tragic and recent event.
It's a devastating headline, absolutely.
Yeah, it really is. But our mission here, I think, is to move beyond that initial shock. Because when we started pulling on the threads, we realized this one incident, it's like a stark, bloody window into a much, much bigger national crisis in South Africa.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
The goal today isn't just to, recount the news. It's to use these reports to really analyze the deep systemic things driving this kind of organized violence. We need to understand that toxic mix that allows something like this to happen. You have the illegal establishments, the sheer availability of firearms, and how it all just collides where regulation breaks down.
And before we get into all that context, we have to start with the facts of the tragedy itself. Because they are, well, they're staggering. We're talking about a mass shooting at a South African hostel. It resulted in the confirmed deaths of 11 people, and that's not even counting the injured.
No. 25 people were shot in total.
25?
25 people. That number alone. It tells you everything you need to know about the kind of firepower involved. The ruthlessness. And you can't ignore that among the dead was a 3-year-old child. It's a detail that it immediately grounds this violence in a place of pure, indiscriminate terror.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's establish the scene first before we get to the motive. So the incident itself, it happened in the early morning hours in a place called Saulsville Township.
Right.
And just for context for you, our listener, that's about 11 miles, so maybe 18 kilometers west of Pretoria, which is the capital.
So not some remote area. This is near the seat of government.
Exactly. And the sources confirmed the attack was swift, incredibly brutal, and it left this massive casualty count right there in a residential area.
And when you look at the victims, the breakdown of the casualties, it says so much. 10 people were dead at the scene. 1 more died later in the hospital, which brings the final toll to 11.
11 confirmed dead.
But it's the ages.
Right.
Beyond that 3-year-old, there was also a 12-year-old boy and a 16-year-old girl.
So children.
This isn't just some targeted hit on adults. This is violence that it obliterates families. It destroys a community.
The reports, they paint this terrifying picture of how it all went down. Armed men just entered the hostel and started shooting indiscriminately. The police spokesperson, Athlenda Mathe, she confirmed the scale of it and immediately announced this huge manhunt for 3 suspects.
And that's a key detail. When you see the sources mention forensic teams, ballistic experts being sent in, it's clear they're dealing with a high level of coordination. But more than that, they're dealing with high-caliber, readily available weapons.
I mean, not just handguns.
To shoot 25 people in a quick attack like that, you are likely using tools of war. And this immediately ties this specific tragedy back to that bigger national issue the sources all highlight.
High gun ownership.
High gun ownership and, crucially, the spread of illicit illegal firearms.
That's a really important distinction because it shifts this from, say, a random bar fight that got out of hand to something that feels like a calculated, organized, and heavily armed deployment of force. The goal wasn't just to hit one person. It was to send a catastrophic message.
It was. Which brings us right to that first major contextual thread the sources are all pointing to.
The motive. What the police think drove this massacre.
That's the pivot point. The investigation, it quickly moved from just counting the victims to looking at the location and the why. And police are heavily investigating whether these killings are directly linked to an establishment on the premises that was selling alcohol illegally.
Right, and this is where we have to introduce the local term the sources keep using. These places are known as shebeens.
Shebeens, yeah.
And the police spokesperson met these. She was incredibly direct about it. She said these illegal shebeens are, and I'm quoting here, giving us a problem as the police.
Which is probably the understatement of the year. But to really get this point, we need to understand what a shebeen actually is in this context. It's more complex than just an unlicensed bar.
How so?
Well, while legally they are outside the law, these places often fill a really critical social and economic gap, especially in poorer communities where, formal regulated venues might not even exist.
So they sort of become community centers by default.
Exactly. De facto community center.
So on one hand, you're saying they meet a real community need, a place to gather, socialize.
Dynamic exchange, yeah.
But on the other hand, the sources highlight these terrifying risks that come with the fact that they're illegal. What are the specific dangers the police cited?
The dangers are really twofold, according to the reports. First, there's the product itself.
For the alcohol.
Yeah. They often sell these homebrewed drinks that police just call substandard.
You don't even know what you're drinking.
Exactly. It's a public health crisis waiting to happen. Unregulated, highly potent. But second, and this is the critical part for our deep dive, these are high-risk environments for violence. The police spokesperson confirmed that, quote, a lot of murders are being reported at these illegal establishments.
So they're not just sites for petty crime. They're flashpoints, critical flashpoints for deadly, organized crime. But why? If they're social hubs, why are they such magnets for murder?
Well, what's fascinating here is how the illegality itself just compounds the violence.
Okay.
Because these shebeens operate completely outside the regulated economy, they become these incredibly attractive targets or even control points for organized crime groups.
Because it's all cash.
All cash, no formal security, no legal protection, and they often become distribution hubs for other illegal things like drugs or...
Illegal firearms.
Exactly, the very firearms used in these attacks.
So organized crime sees these unregulated spots as just ideal territory for turf wars. Control the shebeen, you control the local criminal economy.
Precisely. And if we look at the Saulsville shooting through that lens, it starts to make a horrible kind of sense.
Yeah.
Gunmen with high-powered weapons storming a place linked to a shebeen. It suggests an organized execution, probably settling a score over territory or a debt. It just perfectly illustrates that connection the sources are making.
Illegality, fueled by alcohol and cash, becomes the focal point for mass violence.
It's the perfect storm.
It paints this picture of state capacity just being completely overwhelmed. You can't look at this one shooting, this catastrophic loss of life, without immediately zooming out to the national scale of this crisis.
You absolutely have to. You must connect this incident to the broader structural failure. We're talking about a country of 63 million people, and the sources state it explicitly. South Africa has one of the highest murder rates in the world. That is just a staggering reality.
And the actual numbers, the stats provided in the source material, this is where the true gravity just hits you.
It's breathtaking.
When you look at the police data, for just a 6-month window, from April to September, the average is that more than 60 people have been killed.
60.
Every single day.
Right. Every 24 hours. Just try to visualize that for a second. That is a full-blown national tragedy repeating itself day in, day out for 6 months straight.
It's unbelievable.
So the Saulsville incident, where 11 people died, it's horrific, but it's only a fraction of one day's murder toll in the country.
That number. It contextualizes this as not some horrible anomaly, but a tragic, almost characteristic event in a relentless cycle of violence.
That's it, exactly.
So if that daily reality is the baseline, what did the sources say are the primary fuels for this constant crisis, beyond just the shebeen problem?
The sources are really consistent on this. It's the intersection, it's high levels of gun ownership, much of it illegal, and shootings that are primarily linked back to organized crime.
So not crimes of passion, not isolated robberies.
No, this is structural, planned violence.
We mentioned earlier that forensic and ballistic experts were brought in for the Saulsville attack. If there's 60-plus murders a day, I mean, how effective can that forensic tracing even be?
That is a crucial question. It's about state capacity.
Right.
The whole point of ballistic tracing is to link one firearm to multiple crimes, right? To map out where a specific gang is operating or which illegal supply chain is feeding them weapons.
But with that kind of volume.
But when the volume is this high, when dozens of people are dying every single day, your resources are just stretched impossibly thin. The sources implicitly suggest that while police are trying, the scale of the problem is so vast that the criminal networks are they're outpacing the state's ability to disrupt them.
So the Saulsville incident, hunting 3 specific suspects, that's manageable.
Yes.
But the hundreds of other daily murders,
yes,
that's what maintains the underlying structure.
Absolutely. If we connect this all to the bigger picture, the Saulsville shooting stops being an isolated crime story. It becomes a perfect, if tragic, case study of how multiple systemic failures all align in one place.
You have the guns.
You have readily available, highly destructive firearms. You have organized groups willing to use them indiscriminately for control.
And you have the unregulated spaces.
And you have these high-risk environments like the illegal shebeens where it all converges. It just confirms the problem is structural. It's driven by organized crime that thrives because the systemic Pressures, poverty, lack of regulated spaces create the perfect conditions for it.
It's the difference between treating a symptom and actually curing the disease.
Exactly. You can catch 3 gunmen,
Yeah.
but the demand for illegal alcohol and the supply of illegal firearms that fueled the whole thing, that remains untouched.
The conditions are just there for the next incident tomorrow.
And the day after that.
So let's wrap this up by pulling together the core findings from the source material for you. We started with this specific awful tragedy in Saulsville.
11 dead, 25 shot, including children.
We moved into the police investigation, which connected that attack to the challenge of illegal shebeens and how these unregulated, cash-based places become prime targets.
And finally, we zoomed out. We had to face that grim reality of the daily violence statistics in South Africa.
A shocking average of more than 60 people killed every single day.
Right.
For half a year. That's the structural context.
Yeah.
Now, the sources do emphasize police are actively hunting those 3 suspects from Saulsville, and that they're trying to control the shebeen problem. But here's the final provocative thought we want to leave you with, based purely on the numbers. What does the sheer scope of those daily murder stats, 60-plus deaths a day, suggest about the resources and the policy changes that are actually required to curb this crisis, when the system itself seems to allow organized crime to flourish in the shadows?
Apprehending 3 criminals is a necessary step, of course. It's justice. But the data suggests the problem is so immense. It requires fundamental economic and regulatory restructuring, not just a manhunt. That level of daily violence implies a challenge that goes so far beyond traditional policing.
That is the structural question that demands more exploration. Thank you for joining us as we went deep into the source material. We hope it gives you a crucial perspective for understanding this critical issue. Go forth and continue learning.